Lenyn Sosa leading the team in home runs is certainly a surprise. It's also a big reason why he's the team's most pleasant surprise this season. Let's discuss why on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Additionally, follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Lenyn Sosa had 3 big RBIs in yesterday's series-clinching win over the Tigers. Let's discuss why his team-leading 20th home run yesterday is one of the many reasons he is the team's most pleasant surprise this season. Then Colson Montgomery's start to his big league career continues to impress that he's doing things that only Hall of Famers and superstars have done. And finally, it's another weekly Minor League Monday report. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so I did not have Lenyn Sosa hitting 20 home runs on my 2025 bingo card. Just didn't see that coming. But there he was, hitting a solo shot in the third to help the Sox tie the game up at 3 in the third inning against the Tigers. I also did not have Lenyn Sosa being a productive hitter at this point of the season on my bingo card either. I'll admit, I was loud wrong. I thought, Lenyn Sosa's hot September last year probably wouldn't carry over into the 2025 season. And yet, here he is. Not only going from, I always described him as a Godfather 3 player. You want to be out, but he draws you back in. To being a player that I actually would consider is a part of the team's core going forward. You just got to get rid of Andrew Benintendi so he could be, a DH. And Sosa, by far, is the team's most surprising player. Because before 2024, he was looking like he was going to be nothing more than a guy who'd be racking up frequent flyer miles between Charlotte and Chicago. That's what he was on. That's what the trajectory of his career was. Organizational depth. Guy that maybe plays 30 to 40 games a year in the majors, but is mostly down in Charlotte. Eventually gets released because, hey, you can find a guy like Lenyn Sosa anywhere. And yet, here he is now. Not only proving that he can be a big league hitter and an effective one too, but a hero as he helps the Sox beat the Tigers in a series. And not only that, is a hero in a game where the White Sox win 7 of their past 8 and go 6-1 in 7 games against division foes, all on the road too. That's why it's like, surprise. Lenyn Sosa is actually a good player. I know, I'm still shocked to say that sometimes. And again, I can admit I was loud wrong, because being loud wrong on this one means, hey, we got a good player, a flawed player, but still a player that is a viable raised floor guy. 1.1 F4. Maybe he can get up to that 1.5, 2 F4, in the next hurdle for him to clear. Although I'm not sure who was the bigger hero in yesterday's game. Is it Lenyn Sosa or Will Robertson? Because obviously Sosa, he comes up with the go-ahead 2 RBI single in the 8th. Puts the Sox up, 6-4. They go on to win. However, Will Robertson's amazing home run robbing catch in left field in the 6th, and then driving in the tying run an inning later, does set the stage for the victory. And that was one of the best home run snags you'll see all season. It's definitely top 5. But if you're thinking, okay, Todd, you're throwing out Lenyn Sosa as surprise players. What about Shane Smith or Mike Vassell? Okay, yeah. Definitely, I don't think anyone saw these 2 Rule 5 picks being effective pitchers. I don't think anybody had Shane Smith being the team's all-star. but they were also complete unknowns coming into this league. They were Rule 5 picks. Basically scratch off guys. You paid $100,000. Well, in the White Sox case for Smith, they claimed Vassell off of waivers after the Rays paid the $100,000. But still, you took flyers on these guys. Miguel Vargas salvaging his career. Yeah, that could be another major surprise this year, especially since he looked like he was being held hostage most of the time last season. But at the same time, he had the talent. He was a former top 100 prospect and the centerpiece in terms of the return for the White Sox in a major 3-team deal. And you could argue, well, Colson Montgomery's amazing start is a huge surprise given his struggles in the minors, but he's also a former first-round pick. You should still be expecting greatness from this guy when you pick a guy, in the first round. Lenyn Sosa was a guy through 63 games between 2022 and 2023 that just was not looking impressive. That was not basically matching up to, this guy's a top 10 prospect. This guy could potentially be, a reinforcement piece that we were thinking in 2022. Hey, maybe he could finally solve second base. Although in 2022, he was never given a fair shot. He only played in 11 games. But in 2023, when he did get at least a little bit of a sample size, he gives you a 201, 224, 348 slash line. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, this guy, I don't think this guy's going to be it. And you think about it, last season, he was demoted twice. First time because he couldn't hit worth a lick. 134 to start the 2024 season. And then he's demoted again because he just can't drive the ball. He had 4 home runs. And he'd go down to AAA, rake. Come back up, not do anything. And that's why it looked like he was going to be passed along in the organization. Now, obviously, an impressive September gives him a chance to be considered for this year's roster. And that's, I think, a lot of us, that's all we thought. Go back, every day, listen to my episodes. And I had guests on that were like, yeah, that really hot September he had, where he was probably like the only decent player the White Sox had at all to end that horrific season, probably isn't going to sustain. And yet, here it is. I mean, think about it. He went from possibly being DFA'd because he was out of minor league options. He's gone now on to lead the team in home runs. Now, 20 home runs. You'd like it to be a lot higher for a team, but we're seeing the White Sox start to put things together. Obviously, the standard for next year is hopefully, 20 home runs is not leading the team on September 8th. But going from being, this is your last chance to prove you can be worthy of a roster spot to being a major source of power towards this lineup, that's a huge surprise. That's one of the biggest surprises to me this season. Now, the next surprise would be, can he actually develop into a decent fielder and increase his walk rate to, even 7, 8, 9% and be that over 300 on-base percentage guy? When you look at, because I'm not bashing Lenyn Sosa, because again, the White Sox need raised floor players just as much as they need, superstar players. And I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. But you want to see, if he's going to always be that decent 750 OPS guy, you would like to see some of it be made up by his on-base percentage, because he's relying slowly on slug percentage. And that's why it's a fine line right now for him to be a value hitter, because right now we're seeing the average dip a bit with his free swinging ways. So that means that's going to be taking away a source of him actually getting on base at least just a bit under 300. And again, 300 is not great. 350 is the number you want to hit, but it's still enough to where you can put together a decent 750 OPS. But he is coming up clutch. 279 average with runners in scoring position. And he has the most at-bats for the White Sox in RISP situations. So it's a decent average there. And again, the next way he can surprise us all, improve his defense, take some more walks. Colson Montgomery is not far behind Lenyn Sosa, though, for the team lead in home runs. His 18 dingers over a 37-game span has also put him in some impressive company that I wanted to discuss after the break of why Colson Montgomery's start to his big league career has been so impressive. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's where there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And I love how I can track my 401k and Roth IRA investments. As you know, I would like to retire before I turn, like, say, 70. And my wife, she loves Monarch Money because it's made budgeting so easy and less stressful. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places where you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. And hey, maybe you get some hope on the way. All right. And also, if you just heard that crash, my wife is decorating around the house for Halloween. We're a decorating early family here, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. Especially Christmas time. I actually like it looking a little festive in like early November. Anyways, Colson Montgomery was doing things to start, his big league career that was on par of like what Jose Abreu was doing to start his big league career. And again, if you're tied to Jose Abreu in terms of rookie accomplishments, you're in some pretty good company. Because obviously Jose Abreu will always be a franchise legend. But now Colson's doing things at the plate that is on par with Frank Thomas, Jim Thome, and Albert Bell. And while the stat I'm about to give you is going to seem random, it's impressive in that he's doing things that only the truly great players have done in a White Sox uniform. And the hope is Montgomery joins those guys as being legit superstar players, maybe even a Hall of Famer, maybe even one of the best players of all time in franchise history. Because we got to hope that this is not a Josh Fields run, because Josh Fields had a similar start to his career in terms of bashing home runs early on in his career. We don't want to see this be a Gordon Beckham situation where it's like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of promise. And then that long swing is like, oh no, he's going to get exposed. But, Colson's giving off a lot of vibes that he's probably potentially not going to get exposed. He's got the potential to be an all-time great baseball player for the Chicago White Sox. Because he has 18 home runs in a 37-game span. Hopefully is the preview of this is a star-studded career, much like Frank Thomas gave when he came up in 1990. Much like, the previews that Jim Thome and Albert Bell gave for Cleveland when they came up, and then obviously eventually joined the White Sox. But by going deep on Friday, according to the team, only Jim Thome in 2007 and 2008, Frank Thomas in 2003, and Albert Bell in 1998 have crushed that many home runs in such a condensed time span. So only 4 players have hit 18 home runs in a 37-game time span. And it's Jim Thome, Frank Thomas, Albert Bell, and now Colson Montgomery. Think about that. He's matched a home run that only the team's greatest franchise player in history, Frank Thomas, and 2 of the biggest impact additions in franchise history, Thome and Bell, have done. Now, we could argue, was Albert Bell's, addition really having that much of an impact on the franchise, considering the team never spent a record contract ever again? I mean, think about that. They signed Albert Bell for 5 years, $55 million. And Andrew Benintendi has now the richest free agent contract in history at 5 years, $78 million. And think about that. It's only gone up by 23 million. That's not really, even if you adjust it for inflation, that's not like, oh, wow. And now you start to see why this franchise has been in its pitiful state recently. But, getting back to it, I mean, when you throw that stat out there, yes, it's random, but it's also some elite company to be in, and it's a sign that usually only the best players go on this type of run. Only the elite of the elite do these types of things. And that's encouraging because it shows that, Colson's not some flash in the pan. That this isn't just a heater and it's going to go away. And you know what also is impressive? Colson he's on this run as a rookie. He's doing this in his first 51 games. He had 18 home runs in his first 51 games. And he didn't even hit a home run in his first 12. I'm doing the math right. 37. Yeah, 37. Hold on. 14 games. So let's give him even more credit. First 14 games, not a single home run. And then he comes up and he's going on this home run barrage. He's just 2 behind Lenyn Sosa for the team lead. And you think about it too, as a rookie, Frank Thomas had just 7 home runs in the first 60 games he played in 1990. That was his cup of coffee. He played 60 games at Old Comiskey Park in 1990. Jim Thome, he had 2 cups of coffee, figuratively with the team, with Cleveland. It was basically 67 games, and he only hit 3 home runs. Albert Bell, his cup of coffee was 62. He hit 7 home runs during his cold open, soft launch, as they say. Basically, they debut, before they make their full season. But you think about that. He's actually out-homered Thomas's, Thome's, and Bell's previews by 1. I mean, that's impressive. And Thomas went on to quadruple his home run production in his first full season then in 1991. He went from 7 to 32. So imagine if Colson Montgomery quadruples his 18 dingers right now, and who knows where he's going to finish. I mean, this season's not done. Hopefully, it would be amazing if he could reach 20 to 25 home runs. Now, if he does quadruple 18 right now, he's hitting 72 home runs next year. I don't know if he's going to reach that dream, but doubling or tripling, that would be home run production that we've not seen a lot around these days. I mean, think about it. You got to go back to 2023 for when Luis Robert Jr. hit 38. Please stay healthy, Colson. Don't go down that path. But, it's not like the White Sox have had these amazing home runs a lot lately. I mean, Eloy had a great run against a healthy Colson in 2019. Even the 2021 team, they did a decent job of hitting home runs, but it wasn't like, hey, these guys are potentially hitting 40 to 50 bombs. I mean, again, if Colson can triple his production next year, he's hitting basically 52 home runs. I mean, that would be something that has never happened in franchise history, because I think Albert Bell has the record, and I think it's only 48. So, you just love the fact that Colson's giving you the opportunity to dream. Well, it's Monday, so another weekly minor league Monday report is coming up after the break. Let's discuss how a couple of very young, promising prospects wrapped up their season as low A and high A ball had their season finales over the weekend. This episode is brought to you by ZipPix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for a nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, ZipPix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, ZipPix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. ZipPix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. It's available in 6 great flavors with 2 mg and 3 mg nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. And, I do need to cut down on my coffee and soda intake, because, hey, I'm a parent. I've been basically living off of caffeine for a little whiles now. And one way to do that is using the, caffeine toothpicks. I definitely need to reduce, my coffee intake. Probably isn't good for me to be having 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. So Zip Picks toothpicks could probably help me there. So go to zippickstoothpicks.com. Use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. You must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zippickstoothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zip Picks toothpicks. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. And I hope you had a good weekend. Again, mine was pretty low key. Just did some things around the house and, ran some errands. Watched some White Sox baseball. Saturday's game, win streaks are bound to end. They can't last forever, and when you run into Tariq Skubal, it's really hard to keep a 6-game losing, win streak going. So, I'm not disappointed that they lost 6-0, but yesterday, that was fun to watch. And this stretch of winning 7 of the last 8 has been just really fun to watch. And watching Low-A Kannapolis and High-A Winston-Salem this year was also fun, especially when Brady Montgomery was at High-A and you had Sam Antonacci and Jeral Perez basically hitting 1, 2, and 3. That was a lot of fun. Obviously, Antonacci and Brady Montgomery got promoted to Double-A. And the reason why I'm bringing up Kannapolis and Winston-Salem is their seasons are now over. High-A and Low-A, they wrap up, in early September. And neither are going to the playoffs. So unless there is a surprise call-up or two to Double-A, 4 of the team's top 10 prospect seasons are done. They're now finished. And in total, 11 of the team's top 30 prospects have now wrapped up their 2025 season. So I kind of want to go over that in this week's Minor League Monday Report. And I think Caleb Bonemer, Christian Oppor, and Jeral Perez of that group turned in probably the most promising seasons. Those 3 definitely gave the vibes that, hey, these guys can be pieces that the White Sox can use. Now, obviously, it's still going to be a little bit, so don't be like, oh, these guys are going to be ready for next year. No, these are guys that are probably going to be part of, again, your reinforcements to the, core that's emerging. Because I hate to wish this evil on it, but you're going to have some regression. You're going to have some injuries. That's why you need reinforcements. Again, that's why last decade's rebuild failed so spectacularly, because there just wasn't any reinforcements once you had that regression and injuries to Eloy and Yohan Moncada. You just didn't have guys to take their spots. You didn't have someone to supplant Andrew Vaughn or Gavin Sheets. It's just, and that, think about that. That was your reinforcements. Gavin Sheets. And I talked about it. Lenyn Sosa just wasn't ready to be a reinforcement player. So they just didn't have that. So this is why, guys producing at Low-A and High-A right now to at least give off the vibes that, hey, not only can they be players that you can eventually use, but they can also, again, help supplement, enhance. That's another thing to look at it too. On the other end, they didn't have anybody once they got to the, competitive window to enhance the roster. It was basically Andrew Vaughn, and it wasn't like a huge enhancement. It wasn't like Riley Green. Think about that. That's what I'm talking about. That type of impact. And Bonemer probably had the most impressive of all the season. He reached top 100 prospect status per MLB Pipeline, had a 281 average and an 874 OPS, along with 12 home runs in 107 games split between Low-A and High-A. He was really impressive in that short 11-game stay at High-A Winston-Salem. Had a 1.02 OPS. And MLB Pipeline projects this year's first-round pick, Billy Carlson. He's going to be the team's top prospect by 2027. But if Bonemer hits like this, Carlson's got some competition for that spot. And you also definitely want Bonemer to hit because, again, it can definitely ease the sting of the White Sox taking Higgins Smith over Connor Griffin or J.J. Weatherholt. Connor Griffin right now, who's considered the top prospect in baseball per MLB Pipeline, and Weatherholt, who's considered, number 6. And every day, as you remember, I've talked about Higgins Smith, his tumbling down the prestige. But again, it's still way too early to write off Smith. But still, I mean, at least I think the thing is, and I got to remind myself, when we crushed the White Sox for passing on those 2 guys, they did go back into the second round and mitigate it by getting a guy like Caleb Bonemer, who's just as equally talented and young at the same time, and he's proven it. So let's see what he can do at high A next year. Oppor, he pitched 87 2/3 innings between low A and high A, had a 3.08 ERA overall with a 3.31 ERA in his final 17 starts with a dash, struck out 116 combined between A and double A ball. And if he puts those numbers up at double A, and that to me is the goal for him, he should be able to get to double A next year. He's got a shot to be a top 100 prospect. And he's also got a shot to be a darn good starter in the show, especially left-handed. You really got to like where his career is going. And definitely, if Smith does not pan out, this is, again, why you got to keep taking pitchers and keep developing pitchers. Just keep the pipeline moving. Now let's hope he avoids, the dreaded Tommy John surgery. Then you got number 19 prospect Jeral Perez. Now, he may have hit only 244 at high A. But the reason why I put him as having one of the more promising seasons of the top 30 prospects at high A and below is he crushed 22 dingers. And he did have a 763 OPS. And I do love his power potential. Because right now, this farm system is a little light on guys that can go deep. And that's the thing, it's like you need guys that can crush the baseball in this organization. Because again, what plays well to right field? Power. And I'm hoping Perez continues to crush home runs. Although I've talked about it, I mean, you might have to explore moving him to the outfield because you are having a crowded young infield. At some point, some of these guys do have to get moved around if there's a path to the big leagues for them. In terms of the rest of the top 30 prospects that were at high A or lower, this year's third-round pick, Kyle Odisi, he'll wrap up his brief first year of pro ball because remember, he was this year's third-round pick, and he immediately, once he signed, got sent to high A after playing in, continuation camp. Had a 185 average in 28 games, but did have 4 dingers in that short span. George Wolcott, he'll finish with a 223, 317, 362 slash line at low A. That is now down from the 241, 342, 428 slash line the team's number 10 prospect had. And last year in 76 games at low A. So a little bit of regression. But remember, he is just 19. He did go from 11 home runs last year to 13. So there is a little bit, he at least hit 2 more home runs. But the strikeouts did climb from 132 to 147. And every day, as you might remember me last year talking about, like, hey, let's look at the strikeouts. That's a data point to see what his development is like. And it's gone up. And I would rate his second full season of pro ball as up and down. He did have that terrible start in April, May, then hit great in June, went into a little bit of a rut in July, but posted solid production in August, and he had a 887 OPS in September. But I do think he has to start showing more improvement at the plate next season. Like, he's got to avoid these ups and downs because he's going to be 20, and he's played 2 years at low A. So you want to start seeing that, hey, let's start this and let's, show some ascension from a 6th-round pick that had first-round talent. Again, you want to see more of like what Caleb Bonemer has been providing. Number 15 prospect, Gage Zeal, he'll finish with a 4.01 ERA in 6 starts at Winston-Salem after coming over in the Austin Slater deal with the Yankees. Number 18 prospect, Javier Mogollon, he hit 220, but did have a 734 OPS in his first full year at low A. Again, he's 19, so you just like to see him ascend more. Number 21 prospect, Matthias Lacombe, He pitched 17 and 2/3 innings at low A. He finished with a 4.08 ERA. Number 26 prospect Adrian Bautista barely pitched this year, because he was hurt. Did make it back in time to get some innings at high A, but that's about really all you can say. And then number 28 prospect Samuel Zavala, as I talked about on last week's Minor League Monday Report, really impressed that he fought his way back into top 30 status after that awful 24 season at high A. And then infielder Ryan Burrows, he just snuck in. He just joined the top 30 upon a couple of more graduations from prospect status. Decent, solid career, but I don't know if he's going to stay in top 30 once they update it in the offseason. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with Jordan Lazowski of Sox on 35th to really balance out the data and the eye test that we should be kind of looking at this early in the rebuild. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.